Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. That was a really interesting, very interesting and scary discussion with Alex about zoning and the morass that he finds. And understand, Alex is in the business of understanding municipal zoning, working with planning departments, working with city councilors, working with developers to try to get development through. And so he knows what the challenge it is to try to get development approved. And what he described was a zoning morass, a problem that was so deep he called it a broken municipal democracy. You know, it's shocking when someone that's actually trying to build our housing that we so desperately need says that it's governmental bureaucracy, red tape, regulation, and politicians that don't understand the problems and are getting in the way more than they're actually solving the problems. That is the issue in us being able to get the housing we don't so desperately need built. We talked about a few things that I think are really critical. We talked about how zoning needs to be flexible, open and transparent, and enhancing of property rights rather than damaging them. And I think this is true. You know, you think about what zoning's all about. It's to say this is what we decided to build in this area in general terms, excuse me, and allow people to build it. You know, the idea of your home is your castle. You should be able to do some things, and zoning should be there to stop you from doing the things that society doesn't want you to do in that area. But what he described and what I think exists too often is a zoning that actually is, we want to approve absolutely everything you want to do, even if it's probably completely consistent with what society in the end is going to agree that you want to do. And we've got to have you submit almost anything you want to do as a minor amendment or a major amendment to the city council planning process. And I think that this, you know, new as of right to build a fourplex, you know, makes sense that, you know, if you want to put in a basement apartment, if you want to put in a mother-in-law suite or a granny suite or whatever you want to call it, if you want to, you know, put in a laneway house, which is the rage in Vancouver and Portland and San Francisco, etc. You should have the right to do that without having to go through the whole process. And I don't think that's going to change the fabric of our communities dramatically. You know, the statistics are that places that have put in this place, it's been like 5%. Like a very small amount of people have taken advantage of it. And frankly, it's a lot of the people that have done it illegally that have legalized it, because I think a lot of people have basement apartments or second suites or multiple families living in one house, or multiple generations at least. I heard the story about, you know, a street where everyone wanted a deck, but every single person had to go for a minor variance for the deck. Well, you know, what we should have done is we should have changed the zoning and said decks are allowed so that people didn't have to go through that process. And you know, big brother state, you know, over regulation, over red tape. I want to get involved in absolutely every decision you make. It's that kind of attitude that I think is wrong. I think that, you know, the best zoning, as he said, is the zoning when a majority of the people don't actually have to submit. It's only the exceptions that have to submit. I think today it's everyone has to submit, and that's a problem. I think that we've developed a system that is overly complex, overly taxing, overly politically influenced, and I think it's wrong. And because of that, it takes 2 to 3 times as long. Some people say 5 to 7 years. Other people say even longer than 5 to 7 years to get approval for a development. And it only takes, you know, 2 years, maybe 3, to actually develop and build a development. That's what's causing the major problem that we've got. And we've got to change it. Then I think the second thing is he talked about the involvement of politics in the process, and he talked about a broken municipal democracy, that politicians too often are there just to serve the people that voted them in, rather than the general interests of the society. And I think this is complicated by the fact that the people that voted them in tend to look like me rather than, you know, half my age or even younger. I think that, you know, the voter turnout that's 21% municipally overall is substantially more than that, above 50% for people that are, you know, 60 or whatever and older, and probably less than 5% for the people under the age of 30. So therefore, the politicians, if they're working for the people that voted them in, catering to their base, aren't working for the future of Mississauga. And they're certainly not working for the newcomers that are coming here day in and day out, or the renters that I think are, dreaming about becoming homeowners, or the young people that want to move back to Mississauga, but can't because they can't afford it. We need to have an attitude that is far more about the right thing for the whole society rather than just what I got to do to get reelected. And I also think that, this NIMBYism versus YIMBYism, in my backyard. We need more people to stand up for what's right rather than just the people that are arguing about what they think is wrong. Do I think that the people that are impacted should have a voice? No question they should have a voice. But so should the people that are a little less impacted but still are relevant within the community. In other words, not the people just next door, but the people a little bit farther afield. And frankly, the politicians and our society has to take into account the people that aren't here as of yet. He talked about, how too many councillors get involved and they almost treat their wards like a fiefdom, and they have too much decision-making process over what goes on and what gets approved in their wards, and that one ward councillor won't get involved in and override what another ward councillor wants because they don't want the ward councillor that is the other one getting involved in their area, and that's wrong. I got to tell you, I was really upset the other day, Monday night. Carolyn Parrish, candidate for mayor, said that we've got a broken system, but her solution was to have a mayor's summit once a month with qualified developers that would come in and tell her what's wrong so she could break the system. That's not the solution, because then you've got a concern about political favoritism, about social favoritism, about how she determines who is right or wrong. That's not a zoning, fair, ethical system. The reality is the system should work. And what she should be doing if she's so lucky to be elected mayor, and what I would do if I was elected mayor, is I would change and improve the system in a couple of ways. Number one, just the approval time period has to be shortened by like 50%. And I think you could mandate that and it could get done. The bureaucracy doesn't have to go on as long. I was in Hamilton Monday morning, 8:30, met with the chief planner who did the right thing, and he thought things through, and he got all the right people in the room at the right period of time. And he didn't in any way, shape, or form override the rules, but he made sure that people made the decisions effectively and efficiently and equitably. That's what needs to be done, is that you've got to have a system that works, not get politics involved in this. The system should work. The politicians are responsible for managing and changing the system, not for inserting themselves and messing it up to their benefit sometimes, or to some of their friends' benefits. I think that I think the other thing that we've got here is a development charge issue that we need to talk about. And the city very justifiably spoken loud and long about how the development charges are an important source of tax revenue, and they don't have other sources of tax revenue. And I think that's true, but I worry that the argument went against the most important issue here, which is what we do is we overtax new development. Cheaper condos and townhouses in the $20,000 to $50,000 range, units that are more expensive over $100,000. That tax goes on newcomers. That tax goes on young people. That tax goes on renters that want to become homeowners. It's regressive tax. It's one of the worst, if not the most regressive tax in our whole municipal, federal, provincial tax system, and it's wrong. Now, the fact that we need more revenue is true. And so if we reduce or get rid of development charges, we should and need a replacement for that money. But it shouldn't come through taxation on new development. Another issue here, I think, is a lot of excuses that people have about foreign buyers, investor buyers, empty unit tax, etc. What they're doing is they're looking for a scapegoat, but what they're doing is actually harming the system. Let's understand, to get a construction financing to develop a condominium, you need to have, call it 80% of the condo pre-sold. Those things that people are criticizing, the foreign buyers, the investors, and other things, people that might buy a condo to rent it out Airbnb, took the natural buyer that wants to own or occupy the unit from 40 to 50% up to that 80% to get the financing, by getting rid of those people that were not a majority of the buyers, but were a sliver of the buyers. Actually, what they've done is they've harmed you. They've harmed all of us, because it takes away that probability that you're going to get to that 80%. You can't get the financing. You can't get the financing. You're not going to build. These politicians haven't thought through the impact of their decisions. And the impact of the decisions is to harm the rest of us. And they don't think about it, and they don't think it through. You know, last night, I was at a debate where they talked about a subway to Dixie Road, and people got excited. Two big problems with it. Number one, the two largest developments that we got going on in Mississauga today are Brightwater at at Mississauga Road and Lakeshore, and Lakeview at Dixie and Lakeshore. One is 15,000 to 20,000. The other one is 40 to 50,000 people. Huge influx of potential development and potential housing. Not one extra lane of roadway was planned to be built. Not any transit improvement towards those developments, other than the Huron-Ontario LRT, which stops a long way at the Port Credit Go away from that development. South Mississauga is going to be a congestion nightmare. And your politicians haven't addressed it. They didn't think about it. And I'm not blaming the developers here. The developers had all the right to build that development. It was the city council's responsibility to figure out whether the traffic would work, whether the congestion was going to be abysmal. And it is going to be abysmal. Those people on Mississauga Road, maybe you don't have a lot of sympathy for them, on Huron-Ontario, on Cawthra, on Lakeshore. It's going to be terrible. And what happens when those roads are blocked up? They're going to go on Stavebank. They're going to go on Ogden. They're going to go on Lorne Park. It's going to be an absolute disaster. And you know it. That's another ward of whole population that is moving into South Mississauga, without one extra laneway, not even one extra lane of traffic or a transit improvement. And then they tell, I want to bring a subway to Dixie. I think that's a brilliant idea, a good idea. I've argued for it for a long period of time. But they don't tell you the only way you're going to get a subway to Dixie is if you build at Dundas and Dixie something comparable to what Vaughan is building at the end of the subway in Vaughan, or what Richmond Hill is planning at Steeles or at Highway 7 at the end of the subway extension on Yonge Street. There are 15,000 units planned for Yonge and Steeles, more at Yonge and 7. Vaughan Metro Center has got 50, 60 stories of towers. I happen to think the Dixie and Dundas corner might make sense for that. But you know what the current zoning allows? 12 stories within a reasonable walk of the GO train station. Why is the city thinking about extending the subway to the East Mall? It's because there's 16 towers planned at Cloverdale. Sure way, maybe makes sense because you've got a massive shopping mall. You're not going to get a subway if all you're building is 12 stories. You need intensification. These politicians have got to tell you the truth, and they're not telling you the truth. So I think that our zoning system is broken. The planning time period, the approval time period is out of control because it is just red tape, regulation, delay. And people don't get the approvals. And the interest rate keeps on clocking, and the developer can't make money. And then, the other two nights at these debates, people have complained about how many building permits have been submitted, approved, but the builders haven't started. And they blame that on the builders. You know what? They've got a certain amount of cost in the ground already, in the land they bought, the development expenses they had to incur, and the interest clock that kept on clicking. Until and unless it makes economic sense for them to proceed, they're not going to proceed. And it's not their choice. They need to convince a banker to finance them. They need to convince 80% of the condo buyers to buy. And so the reason why it's not proceeding is because the economics doesn't make sense. And the economics doesn't make sense for a couple of reasons. Interest rates are high. We all know that, because prices have gone up, but they've sort of not continued to gone up and stabilized. And for condos, they may have actually come down. But also because taxes are way too high. And you see that there are some people that are really looking at the potential for development in purpose-built rentals. Why? Because the governments there have reduced taxes and they've provided cheaper financing. So you want people to build condominiums today? Get rid of the development fees, or maybe get rid of the development fees below $500,000 of a unit. People would pretty quickly start building. I think that we've got a municipal democracy with 20% turnout, primarily older homeowners involved, the ones that are involved in the community. Not everyone wants to get involved in the community. And so it's the older, louder voices that end up running our politics, influencing our politics. And I think the politicians way too often make the decisions for the benefit of people that vote rather than the people that that they should be thinking about, which is the whole community. I think in the city of Mississauga, we've got a problem. And I think you need to ask a couple of questions. Do we need more affordability, cheaper housing? Do we need less congestion? Do we need more vibrant main streets? Do we need more and better parks and recreation and nature? I think the answer to all that is yes. And if our current city council hasn't been providing it, why give one of those city councilors that's been part of the process of creating the situation that we've got the role of leader, mayor, to change it? You know, it's that old adage of the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I also think that 21% turnout says that people are saying to us loud and clear that our democracy is not working, that it's a failed democracy. They're effectively saying, is democracy, particularly municipal democracy, still relevant? Does my voice count? Does my vote count? Does City Hall listen to me? I think young people are saying, doesn't. Renters are saying, it doesn't. You know, there's this one controversy I got to tell you about. Chartwell House, they were going to convert from a seniors home into a rental apartment, and they were going to evict all of the seniors. They had to go to the Committee of Adjustment to get approval. The rule is that you've got to notify everybody that's affected, but they determined that that was only people that were owning properties, and so they only notified landowners in the area. They didn't notify any of the renters. They treated them like they were less than people. And my read of the law is that that was wrong. They should have notified them. But if you don't even notify people of the change, is that democracy? And all your city councilors stood by, even as people complained about that, and allowed that to be happen. And seniors that have been living in this facility for 10 or 20 years are going to have to find a new place to live in 2 months, evicted on the street. And there's no place around that's got rental rates anywhere close to what they can afford to pay and have been paying. I think it is a travesty of what's going on right now. I think we have some poor leaders in Mississauga. They're naive at best and foolish at worst. And I think the only thing that we can do is vote in some change. And I'd like to believe that a business person like myself can actually be that change. But you don't know me. And so I encourage you to go check me out on my briancrombie.com website, which is all about my radio show, or my briancrombie.ca website that's all about my political campaign for Mayor of Mississauga. Thanks for listening. I'm on every night on 9:60 a.m. You can stream me online at www.saga960am.ca at 6 p.m. And after the fact, you can always get my website, on my website, briancrombie.com, all of my podcasts and all my videos, as well as on social media and on podcast servers. Thanks for joining me. Good night, everybody.